Welcome back to Life of Artists podcast, the podcast where we explore the journeys of creators who live, breathe, and push the boundaries within their art. Today, we are joined by multi-talented and incredibly resilient Gelsey Laurie. In this raw conversation, Gelsey opens about sacrifice, healing, validation. So let's dive into it. Welcome to Life of Artists podcast. So at this point in your life, looking back at your career, who are you today?
Oh, that is such a good question because I all in all, I title myself an entertainer because I've kind of dipped my pen into a lot of different aspects of the entertainment ink, if you will. I started off first and foremost as a professional dancer. I joined the circus, worked really hard to then become an aerialist. I was briefly a stuntwoman. I do consider myself an actress. I really didn't do Hollywood or any of that, but I've done theater, I've done some shorts, and I'm also a content creator and a podcast host. And so it's just kind of when I put that umbrella, my main goal is I'm an entertainer.
And can you take us back to the story where your artistry began? What was the reasoning behind? Why did you end up doing that?
Yeah, I was born into it. So my mom owns a dance studio. So yeah, and so it's just like I have an older sister. She was dancing. I think I was 3 years old the first time I was on stage, and it's just I think actually my mom was on stage with me pregnant. And so technically I was on stage
You're on
before I was
stage.
even born. Yeah, yeah, she has a photo and she's I think a month out from having me. Um so it was kind of just all I ever knew was entertainment, stage, the show, sequins, and it felt very natural as well. Like it just the comfort of an audience and kind of just giving my all felt comforting, and I still call it home to this day. Stage is home for me. But as I got older, it's we were a very lively family, and my sister and I were always putting on shows in the living room and just kind of developing our own style and entertainment and artistry as you would as kids. And so it just kind of from there developed. I then around 8 years old decided to get really serious. Like that's kind of around the age 8 to 10 was formative of when I was like, I want to train hard, and like it became a craft. And I was at a very intense ballet school. So that's when I started really intensely training at ballet, and everything became about the art. And I think ever since then, be it the journeys and roads of different ways I've gone, that's kind of where it formed.
I have a question because, I can reflect on my personal experience, but when you're a child, you have so many disruptions, and especially I studied in US, but as a child, it's very hard to have a private and still being a child and have this life of being a child. So how did you manage that? Classes. I'm sure you had plenty of them.
Yes, so many. So when I was very young, again, up until the age of 8 or 9, I was taking maybe like 2 classes a week. When I was younger, I was at my mom's studio a lot, but I wasn't training the way I did. I would say, yeah, like 9 or 10 is when it really got intense. And then 11, 12, you're still a child at that age, but
Yeah.
I was doing at least 20 hours a week on top of school. So sometimes I would be taken out of school early so I could go make the early class. And my mom would pack a dinner to eat at the studio in between. And it was very intense. Sometimes I do say, I don't feel like I ever lost my childhood or kind of sacrificed much of it. I still feel like very fulfilled, but there is a sacrifice there
Yeah.
when you're that young training. It's not so much I played a lot. So I found ways to play at the studio, and we still found ways to be kids in rehearsals, tech rehearsals at the theater. And my weekends, if Sunday was off, I still remember being an age where I was training really hard at the ballet bar, but still playing with Barbies at home. I was still so young. Um, and so I just kind of finding my sister really helped. I had an
Mhm.
older sister who was my best friend at home. And so we got to have playtime at home. And the summer was pool time. My family was really good about taking vacations, and, that was kind of my play. But it is really difficult
Yeah.
to let yourself be a child in your mind and be curious and whimsical when you have a very strict goal. And I was a very determined young child. Like, it's my sister struggled with it more. She kind of had more ADD, and
Hmm.
I was the opposite. I just like laser focused in, which became kind of who I was for the rest of my life, be it for the better or worse. Sometimes for the worse. But so yeah, I think there is a sacrifice there.
What when I was looking at your videos on YouTube, you mentioned like you were working on celebrity cruises,
Hmm.
right? So how is your experience? Because like you're like in the sea all the time and like being in entertainment and like being there 24/7. So can you walk us through your experience there?
Yes. I will say when I first started cruise ship contracts, I was 19 years old, which it's a great job when you're younger because
Mhm.
you are stuck on the ship, you are with the same people. There's
Yeah.
definitely a party culture, and I was at the age which was that would be when you're at college normally. So um yeah, it was a really interesting experience because Celebrity Cruise Lines at the time went through a production company that also put on a circus show. So they
Okay.
would take their dancers and train them to become aerialists as well, which I don't think is the safest in my opinion, but I was
Mhm.
already training my circus stuff. So they put us through like a 3 week, really intense boot camp. I mean, it was 8 hours a day of training,
Oh
bleeding,
wow.
bruising, like horrible into rehearsal. So I would say we were on land for about 2 months rehearsing before we joined the ship for 9 months. And it's with the same cast the whole time. So it's anywhere between, I mean, we're looking at like 11 months with the same people, but then, yes, you get on the ship
Yeah.
and you're stuck on the ship. It's you live with the people that you play with, that you work with, that you sleep with, that, it gets messy to a point, but also you kind of find your rhythm. I was lucky enough to be in Europe and in the
Mm.
Mediterranean for most of my run. So in the beginning, everything was so fresh and new where I was like, oh my gosh, we're in Mykonos today. Oh my gosh, we're in Istanbul. Oh my gosh, we're in Venice. And so there was a lot of that excitement mixed with I was still so young that it was so much fun to do these big production shows on a stage and have that difference. I did it for about 2 years, and
Mm.
towards the end of my last contract, which was 11 months on the ship, I started hitting my wall. I got depressed, kind of went crazy, and was just ready to get off. So you just have to find your balance. It's
Mm.
either, like I said, I would say I drank a lot my first cruise ship
Mm.
contract because that's kind of what there is to do. And then my last contract, I stopped drinking and I got really obsessive about working out and would
Yeah.
wake up at 6 a.m. And you kind of just have to find something to obsess about to fill your
Yeah.
time and just take the most of it though, because I did get to travel the world and I really tried to soak that all in. So it's kind of just making the most of what it is.
And like what I was like wanting to talk about like the topic of defining the success as being an artist, and you have a very long career at this point. And how do you define the success as an artist versus the traditional way of being successful in terms of like you're a lawyer, you're a doctor. So how do you
Yeah.
define this for yourself?
That's something I used to struggle with. And that's why I made a whole YouTube video about it because I just kind of stopped and found myself even negatively talking to myself of like,
Mm.
constantly there would be points in my career that I'm like, oh, when I make it, I haven't made it yet. I haven't. And
Yeah.
there was a point that it's like, oh, well, when I get this thing. And it was when I was at Cirque du Soleil as a soloist. And I was like, is this not good enough for myself? Like,
Yeah.
this is a really, peak of a mountain in this career. And so I kind of re-looked at things, and success has to come from an internal place, I think. And I think it has to come from fulfillment and happiness. Unfortunately, I think we tie success to money,
Yeah.
and I do too. And so that's why as an artist, we don't make that much money. And so
Yes,
it's
we
always
know.
kind of like, when am I going to make the money? And that's when I'll be successful. But, and maybe, like you said, a doctor, lawyer, it's like that can be part of it. But as an artist, I do think financially there is an aspect that ties in. I think
Hmm.
when you fully are able to support yourself or even half support yourself from your art, that can tie into success. But I think there can be very successful artists that maybe have a full time, steady, stable, you know, uh, not comfortable, survival job, if you will,
Yeah.
a normal job, and then have their art on the side. That doesn't mean they're not successful in their art. For me, I saw though that if I was doing what I loved and performing and getting paid for it, why is that not successful? Why is that
Mm.
not a success? And so I started looking at it that way. I went back to theme parks. Theme parks were my very first job when I was a teenager. And then I went back to them after the pandemic. And it was kind of this full circle moment. And my mom
Yeah.
said, "Do you feel like you're taking a step backwards of everything you've done? Now you're going back." And I said, "No, I don't. Like, I'm continuing to work, and this is more conducive for my lifestyle right now, and I'm performing and I'm getting paid. Why is this any different?" And so
Yeah.
that was kind of a huge part of me reframing it as well, is that why does one stage hold more value than another stage? If you're on stage doing what you love and growing in your art, then why is that not success?
And to tap on that, what was like a specific moment that sparked this kind of rethinking era in your life? Because, like, when you're growing up, it's different. Like, you have goals, like, I don't know, being on the Broadway or being like on the national
Mhm.
crazy tours. And like, what was the definition that actually, or like an event that's changed that thinking?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it is true. I always do say, I'm like, just because I said any stage is success, like I'm
Yeah.
not discrediting goals. And I think they're so important, and like our dreams, it's like I had
Yes.
big dreams, and was I was fortunate enough to reach a lot of my goals and dreams, but also I put in the hard work, and like,
Yeah.
I got myself there. So it wasn't luck. It was a lot of work. And it's easy for me to say on the other side of those dreams being met that I can go, "Oh, success looks different," because, I did get to do some of those things. But I would say when I was starting my career as a stunt woman, which was my new goal and my new dream, and I put everything in there, I got a huge brain injury that ended
Mhm.
that career very quickly. And the brain injury, it was about 4 years ago now. I still deal with it, and I still have a lot of like residual symptoms. I'm a different person. I have to kind of navigate through this world a bit differently now.
Yeah.
But during my healing, the first year was kind of the major healing point. Even last year, though, last year I had a lot of setbacks again for some reason with the injury, and it forced me to stop. I wasn't able to socialize as much. I wasn't
Yeah.
able to work. I wasn't able to work out, dance, train, like do much of anything. And so it really, as painful as it was and depressing as it was kind of that like thing I had to sit with and go through the pain to then break out on the other side a different
Mhm.
viewpoint. And that kind of reframed my thinking of, okay, why am I doing this? What's the point? Who am I? Who am I with this art? Who am I without it? Which I found was lacking. I really didn't find a lot of self worth and value without
Mhm.
my performance art. And that shocked me and that scared
Mhm.
me. And so I was like, I can't be attached to this thing. Like I feel worthless without it. I have to be okay without it to be
Yeah.
able to, live with it. So that's kind of really where it started reworking, was just through the major brain injury that I was like, first and foremost, I am a human, and that's
Yeah.
enough. And then I kind of built it up from there.
But how long it actually took you to rethink? It was like a few months, or it actually took a
Years.
longer years.
Years. Yeah. It's something that I still struggle with. I would say I'm not like, I've figured it out. Like, I'm definitely in a much more calm place with it, and a more content, and it's awesome. But again, that injury started 4 years ago. And I
Yeah.
would say the first 6 months to a year, even though that was some of the hardest parts to go through, I can't say that that's when those thoughts really concreted in my mind. It I would start to think a certain way, but then when I started working again, it's just like old habits, old thoughts. Our brain is very wired to
Yeah.
think a certain way from childhood,
Yeah.
especially as someone that's been doing this since childhood. And so it I did fall back into old patterns, and I still will fall back into old patterns, and I have to stop and check myself. But I would say maybe a year or so ago, I ended up
Mhm.
taking a full sabbatical from entertainment. I had an agent in Hollywood. I was like, okay, I'll try acting,
Yeah.
and everything was just kind of frustrating me, and I was just meeting these walls, and I was like, I'm fighting against what the natural flow of what's supposed to happen to me. So I took a step back and started working at a restaurant. Never done that before, never waited
Wow, that's
tables. I
major.
know. I've always
That's major.
been lucky enough to work and perform for my work. And I took a step back, yeah, and I started serving, and I did it to make money
Yeah.
because I was struggling, as all artists know that game. And ironically, I was not making good money serving. It just I served at a pool first, and that summer we had the worst season ever. Like the rain hit every day, so the money wasn't great there. And then I got picked up to go to a restaurant, and the money wasn't great there. And I was so depressed. I was miserable.
Yeah.
I would go to tables. I love talking to people, and I would start telling my story. People would ask about me, and every day someone would go, "What are you doing here?" Because it was
Mm,
this tiny little film, and that was like a knife to the heart. Why are
mm,
you here? And I was like,
yeah.
why am I here? Like it really made me go, okay, I can't completely detach from this part of me. But there was other things. I got to grow my personal life during that time and get into a relationship, which I never really had before, or at least for about 7 years. And so I really enjoyed cultivating my personal life
Mm,
during that time, and it made me realize how important that is to me, because that's something I've always sacrificed as well. So then I was kind of like, okay, I really like that aspect of my life. I'm miserable waiting tables, but taking that full step back and then
mm,
finding where I belong, stepping back in, was definitely another key factor of figuring it all out. And I'm still, per se, figuring it out. Like this last year, I decided to start dancing again, here and there, and I've been happy. But I would say after waiting tables, I really fell back, or fell into social media content creation, podcasting, YouTubing, and that sparked this new, like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it kind
um,
of reframed, like, oh, this is my new stage. And
yeah.
it satisfied me, it fulfilled me, it excited me, it pushed me and challenged me the way that performing always had. But it's also nicer on my body. I'm getting older and my body hurts. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'll be 34 this summer, and
You're
I know
still
I'm still
young.
most.
You're still
I know
young.
everyone goes, "Oh, you're so young," but as a professional dancer who then
Yeah.
became a
Yeah.
aerialist in the
Yeah.
circus, who then was a stunt woman, I've put my body through a lot. And
Yeah.
I'm currently in a show right now that this is our final week. I'm in Chicago, and it's not the hardest dancing show, but like my body is just hurting, and I'm like, I
Mm,
don't want to feel this way anymore. And so I'm glad I found the internet to be able
yeah.
to kind of continue what I love doing. But that has kind of stepped away from, for me, it's always been, what is my body capable of
Yeah.
doing?
Of
My
course.
art was, what is the physicalities? What do I look like? What are my tricks? What am I able to do? How high is my leg? How many turns can I do? And so for me, it's really healthy to detach my worth from my physical abilities.
Mm,
Hmm.
that's beautiful that you've been able to achieve that. That's very hard. That's very
It's
hard.
very hard. And I'm not saying I'm on the other side completely. Like, there's
Yeah.
hard days, and there's still a lot of growing and learning, and I'm in therapy, and it's kind of a daily practice. I hate
Yeah.
to sound so stereotypical and cheesy, that it's every day. And but it is something I have to, like,
Oh my
I
goodness.
I was doing this show in San Diego, and then they brought me to Chicago for a month. And even in San Diego, I was like, yeah, I think I'm done. I was backstage one day, and I was just so tired, so tired. And I had to go do a show, and I was like, I am so done having to push through extreme exhaustion to go
Yeah.
entertain people. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm good. Where I used to love pushing through. It was
Yeah.
for the art. It was like
Yeah.
kind of this like badge of honor, like, oh, I'm gonna get through, but I'm dragging, or I'm in pain. And I'm like, I'm done being in pain. I'm done. I'm ready to not settle down. I hate that word, but I'm ready to change my life,
Yeah.
get married, probably let's say in 5 years, have a kid, and kind of just change my schedule to be able to have my weekends, my
Yeah.
holidays with family, vacations, like all the things I always sacrificed, I've started doing. And I'm like, oh, I really want to experience this part of my life. And, I've found someone to do it with, and I'm very happy there. And so I'm ready to, yeah, work remotely and let this platform be my stage now.
Oh no, I'm so happy for you. But I have a question, like for the people who are not that well enough how the performing works. Can you walk us through how the real day looks like? What time you have to wake up, and what time going to bed, and how many hours you have to be in training, rehearsal,
Yeah.
and then go for stage? Like, what was
Yeah.
the schedule like?
It's a lot. So it kind of looks different at every stage of my life and
Yeah,
it looks different
yeah.
per every job. So when I was in the circus, it was very different than when I was dancing. I can kind of just brush over a brief. So, like, when I was 18 years old, I moved to New York City to just
Mm,
go train and audition. And so, a typical day, say then, was I'd probably wake up at 7:30, grab a coffee, grab breakfast, take the subway down to the studio, and I was in a 9 a.m. class sometimes or workshop, kind of sit, stretch, and then I would take a Pilates class straight into a ballet class, have an hour, and then take a 2 hour class, come home, shower, eat dinner, go to bed. And like that was pretty
mm,
clockwork every day. When I was in the circus, at Cirque, it was a little different because when I was in Cirque du Soleil, I was in a resident show in Vegas. So we did 10 shows a week, which is a lot. and,
oh
and we
my
did,
god.
yeah, it's a lot. And I did the same act every show. So it was just a lot of repetitive
Yeah.
motion on my body. Um, but for that, we would do, yeah, 5 days working a week, 2 days off, two shows a night. And I would normally wake up and I love my morning coffee time. Like I'm currently having it now. That's why, I like to just sit and just kind of have nothing to do. But I would kind of take my time. I would wake up around 10 a.m. on those days and rest. And then I would probably go to a workout class around 11 or 12, go train for an hour, come home, kind of get ready for the day. Then I would go to work at about 3 p.m. and then I would train some more. Normally, I'm a little crazy. So I would hang my apparatus and do all my aerial training or any like conditioning for it. Then I would go to physical therapy, get anything that I need done in physical therapy, which was always something because I was always in
Mm,
pain. Go to my dressing room, take about an hour or an hour and a half to do my makeup, my hair. Then I go back in the training room, start doing a proper warm up. We would do first show, have dinner break, re warm up, second show. Then I'd get out about 11:30 p.m. is when I would finish. Maybe about midnight by the time I take my makeup off,
yeah.
get in my car, get home, and from there I would, yeah, make myself something to eat, watch an episode of something on TV to kind of, it's hard because most shows are late. I think
Yeah.
I was going to
Correct.
bed around like 2 a.m. in Vegas, and that's why I sleep till 10. But
Um,
most shows are late, and so the hard thing is like I'm not a late night person. This is a horrible career for me because I really like going to bed at like 10 and I like waking up around 7. But it's hard to do a show where it's you're performing, your energy is the highest, your
yeah.
physicality is the most, and it's also blaring lights in your eyes, blaring music, and
Yeah.
then you go home and you're like, all right, go to bed, and your brain is like, I
Like,
don't think so.
no.
Like, yeah, it's like so stimulated.
What do you think, like, external pressure have a validation on your life, or do you take it, or you don't go with it?
No, I take it. It's actually, it's so funny you asked this question because this morning I was having like a self pep talk that I was like, I really need to work on this. It's something I really need to work on.
Yeah.
And it's something in therapy. My therapist is like,
Mm,
oh, you have validation seeking
mm,
tendencies. And I'm like, look at the industry I grew up in. Like, of
yeah.
course, I was raised, and it's not so much the performance and the applause. Like, that is one part of it where, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, you did so great. Thank
Yeah.
you. Like, that is a cherry on top that feels good to performers. It's also for me, it's like this really respectful thing where it's, when I'm on stage, I give you my all. So when someone comes up after a performance and says, oh, I enjoyed it, it's like, I'm so glad I could do something that you enjoyed. Like, it's to me, it's not, that part is not validating. It's more,
Oh, okay.
I take that part more as like, I'm honored to have like been able to entertain you and make you happy. And so that to me is an exchange of energy almost because I gave you everything on stage. So that's the applause for me is kind of just like that re exchange. For
Hmm.
me, the validation is from directors,
Yeah.
choreographers, teachers, mentors, peers. And so like getting cast in a role or booking a job, that's validation. um it's difficult because, at such a young age, when I started getting into the strict ballet world, I was training myself to fight for attention. I would
Mm.
do anything I could, at 10 years old at the ballet bar, to try to hope the teacher stops at me. And even in a negative way, like a ballet teacher will come up and correct, no, do this instead. That's a positive thing in the ballet world. You
Mhm.
want corrections because that means that they're giving you attention. And so even if we used to sit and like count how many corrections we got in class, and I'd be like, oh, I got 8, and someone would be like, well, I got 12, and it's like, oh my god, you're the favorite this week, you got more than
Oh,
me. And it's
wow.
because sometimes I would go to class and they wouldn't talk to you. Like I remember, if you're not kind of the flavor of the week, I would be at the ballet bar and it's like I didn't get any corrections. And so it's as if I'm not even in class. So you're like invisible. So then you're just like, oh my gosh, the energy is like, oh, I hope they say my name. I hope they see me. I hope they. And so it's just constantly trying your hardest to get the
Mm.
attention and the validation that you exist sometimes. So there's that. And that was, I was very young at that age. So it that kind of started it for me. And then it's difficult because my whole life, every time I trained harder and got better
Yeah.
and got more advanced, of course people go, wow, you've improved, oh my gosh. When I got more flexible, my leg could go higher, people go, oh my gosh, wow. And so I was constantly getting this validation for when I am better, when I perform harder, I get more love. I mean, essentially,
Mm.
validation is just love. And so that's also manifested in my personal life. And that's something I've really had to work with.
Yeah.
I am a people pleaser, which I've really worked on, and I do a lot better now. But I just want to be perfect for everybody in that sense. And I think a lot of it is how I was brought up by my mom. She did a great job, but we were perfect, and she
Yeah.
always talked about that. And then in the ballet world, it's about being perfect. And, even academically, my standards at home were to get straight A's. I was supposed to do very well in school, which I did, but it was, look, I did it. I did it. And so there is a lot of that in my background personally. And unfortunately, it did lead to a lot of eating disorders and things
Mm.
like that, to try to make myself perfect, because in my head I wasn't good enough. And so that all also leads up to needing that validation. I'm doing this, it's the thinner and fitter I got, people were like, wow, my gosh, you look
Yeah.
incredible. I was very unhealthy. I was starving, but I got positive feedback always. So it was like,
So you
okay, I
were
have to
going
keep,
for it more.
yeah, yeah, I would always go for it more. And so I was like, I have to keep sacrificing, my well being, my mental state, my health, because that's what gets me love, essentially.
Mm.
So there was, a lot of that. And I can see it. Again, I've worked really hard on it, and it is not something that goes away. It's something that you have to, back to what we were saying, like work on every day. But social media is a real tough one for me, because I really enjoy making videos and reels. And then it's like I find myself constantly picking up my phone to
Yeah.
reload. Do I have a new
Yeah.
message? Do I have a new
Yeah.
comment? and
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, stop doing things to get this external validation. So that's something I'm working on, and it's kind of changed into now the phone world. Do I have a
Mm.
text? Do I have an email? Do I have a
But
Instagram
it's kind of
like?
hard, like especially like I'm doing podcasts right now, but in general,
Mm-hmm.
like in terms of like social media, I think for artists, like me being an actress and being trained for years to do that, you kind of like ending up people will ask you for the social media following, so it's
Yeah,
kind of like a tricky thing. You don't want to have it
it
your
it is.
brain.
I know. I say this all the time. It's like in our industry specifically. Well, social media can be a great tool for all
Yeah.
businesses, and
Yeah.
it gets you out there, it gets you seen. It's basically like a website now. But for us specifically,
Yeah.
and dancers, actresses, artists, you have to have it, absolutely. And I've seen it in casting calls, auditions, where they ask you to write your social media handle or
Yeah.
how many followers you have.
Yeah.
And I've I envy people. My sister got rid of her Instagram so she could be more, she was like, it was distracting me. She has 2 kids now, and she's like, I wanted to be focused. And I was like, damn, I wish I could do that. Like, and I know I technically could, but it's like, it's, if you're gonna be in the rat race of entertainment,
Yeah, you
you
have
kind of
to.
have to have it, because where you that's where people find you, that's where people look at your work, that's where people might, I do modeling now as well, and it's like I've gotten modeling gigs from that, and it's this real balance of it. It's so hard though for me to find, like, people are like, oh, why don't you just, the first hour of your work day, go on it, answer DMs, and create whatever, post your post, and then leave it for the day. And I'm like, yeah, it's also an addiction. Like,
Yeah,
it's so much easier said than done, where you're like, because I think that I'm like, oh, I could just wait till the end of the night to check all of that. And then the comments, the message is not going anywhere.
yeah,
But it's we've trained our brains for the dopamine hit, I think, and
yeah.
the like excitement. I also use it for entertainment myself, and I like to send memes and videos back and forth to my friends all day. So it also makes me smile and laugh. So it's like I go on for that, but then there is this other part of it. Um yeah, it's interesting. It's weird, and I've used it in an unhealthy way. I mean, even
Mm.
this week I was kind of PMSing, and that's, I'd never feel that great when I'm PMSing. I'm emotional, and I found myself posting on my story things that I thought people would reply to, or kind of
Mm.
thirst traps, even like, okay, let me find like a really sexy photo of myself, because that's what I can project out into the world that I look like right now and feel like, even though I absolutely don't. And then people will validate me back that yes, that's what you are, and it's all fake, and
Yeah.
it's sad. I find myself playing, I do it. I absolutely 100% do it, and I hate that I do it, but
But on top of that, like, how do you think, like, as an artist yourself, how do you tie the self worth to the achievements, or you tie that rather to a process?
hmm like self-worth to achievements.
Achievements, yeah. So you define yourself better, like, I'm self worthy because I have an achievement, or you trust the process that it's going to take you a few years to achieve that, or you just have
It's a
this something.
mix.
It's a mix, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a mix, because sometimes, it is the build up. It is, I again,
Yeah,
it's so cheesy, but it's like, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And
yeah.
I have to now, because I've had so much experience, and I've had the lessons, and I know that right now, like, I'm in the grind again, trying to create a whole new thing online. I know that this is no different than when I was in the gym training my aerial stuff till
Mm,
I was bruised and bleeding, going, I'm exhausted and I'm beating myself up. But that was kind of the thing, not necessarily my goal was Cirque du Soleil. And when I got it, I was ecstatic. But after a couple of years, I was like, okay, so what? Like, and
yeah,
so I know that this is just the process. And so because I've had the experience, I can kind of trust that this is it. And so it's like, when I think part of it is when I have an idea and I actually put that idea into action, I feel like that's a good achievement, because a lot of times there's a lot of ideas I've had that I do nothing with. And I think a lot of people can experience this, where they're like,
yeah,
oh, I have this idea for a script, or I have an idea for a movie or a book, or this painting I want to do, but they don't do it,
yeah,
because I think it's daunting. I think we're scared of failure. I think it'll never be good enough, or it's time consuming, all the things. So when I actually sit and right now film a video and edit it and put it on YouTube, I'm like, oh, I feel like really accomplished, because I'm like, God, I could have just not done that. It'd be so much
yeah,
easier to not do the thing. I'm not getting paid to do it. That's the hard thing, is doing things that you're not getting paid to do, because there's no, motivation, or like um you know what I mean, financial
mm,
gain there. And so when I now at this point do any of that, I feel really successful in that. But also, I do look back at my career and look at my resume and go, God, wow, I did all that. Like, that's a really good feeling too. And it's almost like a very surreal feeling when I look back at all my achievements, because, it's been almost 20 years professionally performing. it feels like a lifetime ago. Like some of these,
Yeah.
my cruise ship career, working on cruise ships, it feels like a different life. Like I'm just like, God, that it feels so long ago. And I feel like I was a different person. It's bizarre. And so it's kind of cool to look back, but I also went through a lot. I worked my butt off to get to a lot
Yeah.
of these jobs. I mean, harder than I can remember. I find training videos still and I'm like, God, I forgot how hard I worked. And so I do feel achievement there, and I'm proud of myself because, it I worked hard for it. So I think for me, the feeling of achievement with or success and content with the achievements is because I worked hard to get there.
Mm.
Had I just, it's like winning money in a contest. You win $5,000. I mean, that would still be cool. I would love that. But winning $5,000 versus working on a project and earning the $5,000,
Mm.
you feel proud about the earning versus the
Yeah.
winning.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of the achievement, but it's also the grind and the work behind it that is what makes it feel so good.
And my two final questions to you today.
Mhm.
What in this season in your life, what are you inspired by? And if you
Mm.
anything that you're working on, you mentioned that you're in Chicago right now. What are the things that you're working on, you will work in the future for?
That's a really good question. That inspired by, um, you know, I'm starting to lean a bit more into modeling. This is such a silly, well, no, nothing is silly because everything
No, I
is
think it's
art
silly.
and it's, yeah.
Absolutely not.
I'm really inspired by, I'm trying to lean more into my like feminine
Mm.
energy and era. I've always been inspired by old Hollywood pinup girls, this, that, but I'm really kind of the more vamp, sexy womanhood. That's kind of my inspiration now. It's like my photography leans more towards that boudoir lingerie, like, but it's something that I'm kind of also doing for myself. Because I've always been so athletic and training and rigid, it's always put me in this like a super masculine energy and hyper independence. And like, even my body was just like, and now I'm really trying to find the soft, sensual side of myself. And so that's why, my friends are like, why do you always do all these like sexy photo shoots and you're in lingerie? And I was like, because it's so much more than just, oh, I look hot and it makes me feel good. And don't get me wrong, there's a part of that, of course, but it's really embracing this energy that I
Mm.
feel like I didn't really get to before. And so I'm kind of inspired by even like Playboy and Sports Illustrated when it just super, bikini on the beach, but it's really what I'm drawn to right now, and it's kind of given me permission to live more in my feminine energy and need help. Which is so silly that those are tied together, but I've always been so I can handle it, I can do it and suffer
Yeah.
inside. And now I'm kind of like, I need you to carry my bags, and that's okay. And it's like for some reason those tie together for me. So, and it's coming out in my work too. I'm having a lot more grace for myself and giving myself that space to explore and have feelings and emotions and all these things that I kind of was just so rigid before about. So I would say, yeah, I'm inspired there, and then I'm really inspired by this whole world on the internet, on
Mm.
YouTube and social media. It's very daunting, it's overwhelming, it can be a bad addiction, but it's what I'm moving into. It's inspired me, and so it's what I want to do. And that's when I started my YouTube channel, and that's kind of what I'm working on. I had a goal to put out a video every week, and then I started a show in San Diego, and I went, oh, this was too much. Like,
Yeah.
I sometimes do that. I will take on way too much. So I have 1 week left here in Chicago. I'm doing a Star Wars burlesque show right now.
Woo!
Yeah, it's so fun. It's called a
Amazing.
yeah,
Everyone,
it's so
please go
much
and
fun.
watch.
Yes, come. We only have 1 more week in Chicago, but
Oh,
it's
so it
it's
won't be
worldwide.
released. It won't be
I
released by
know. I was
then.
like, it'll
Yeah.
be over, but there'll
Yeah.
be. I think there's a show that's opening in London and Las Vegas. I won't be in those, but this show is ever so continuing. So it's called The Empire Strips Back. If it's in your city, go see it. It's funny. It's good. It's everyone. We're all highly trained dancers. There's a comedian. Like it's a great, and it's Star Wars, but um Yeah, I once I finish this though, I'm gonna get home and I kind of have no work lined up and nothing, but that's giving me the time and freedom to fully immerse myself into my YouTube channel, into co-hosting. I got asked to co-host on another YouTube channel once a week and kind of develop some content for that. So I'll be doing that. I'm co-hosting a podcast coming up, and so this is, just everything and anything that's remote media work
Mm,
is really where I'm putting all of my energy into, and I'm very open. I'm aware that my YouTube channel might not be the thing that hits, and that's okay. It's
yeah,
still something that I love doing, and I think everything that we do is not for nothing. Like,
yeah.
it's, if anything, it's I'm practicing speaking in front of a camera, I'm practicing editing skills, and that will help me somewhere else for the project that maybe is the thing that hits.
Absolutely, 100% yes.
Hmm.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your journey. And like, I hope, we see each other somewhere soon again.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
If this episode moved you, please don't forget to share it with your friend. Like, subscribe, and leave the comment with the part that resonated with you the most. And I will see you in the next one.